like the Taliban. I was hoping that this, oh my God. I was hoping that the mask would stop the allergies, but of how green and beautiful everything looks today. Anyway, so I promised you in the last video the story about me not wanting to fight somebody, because I've never had a physical fight in my life. Never. I'm 62. I have a big mouth and carry a big stick. People usually listen to me. I'm very much like a leader, and I'm not saying that like, oh, I'm a leader. I mean, it just kind of naturally happened, and it's my airy self, I'm sure, but it kind of naturally happened that, like, when I talk, walk, whatever, people follow, people gravitate towards me for, like, information or answers, better word, answers. And I don't know why, like, it's nothing I've done. Like, I don't, like, walk around with a sign saying, like, oh, I know all the answers, because I don't. Half the time I gotta look them up, but for whatever reason, that is my MO. With that being said, I've never had to push that envelope. And I've worked with some, you know, used to hire right out of the prisons, and, like, you know, I guess they were rougher type girls, but honestly, because in my work, oh, what a pretty goose. Oh, there was just like a gray blue looking goose. Anyway, in my work, we very much look down on anything violent. Over the course of the 20x years I've worked there, we've had a few fights, but those are so looked down upon. And even just like the words we use about violence is so looked down upon that I literally have had girls call me up in the middle of the night and tell me, oh my God, you would have been so proud of me. I was at the club last night, or I was at the club tonight, and like somebody bumped into me or something, or pulled the drink out of my hand. And normally I would have, you know, gone crazy on her, but instead I thought of you, and I didn't, and I walked away from a fight. And I've had so many of those phone calls, like in the course of my working, that it's like, like this is something I've actually affected a change in making people think before they behave. Now you might say, well, what does that have to do with the video prior? Because I talk about violence on the video prior, because there is a time and place to fight back and fight right and affect a change with some toughness like that. There is moments for that have to happen, because sometimes the only way you can affect a change is through pain or the fear of that pain, one or the other. And so, I understand it. I just don't physically do it myself. So, this is a story about somebody calling me out. And, and it went like this. I lived at this apartment complex when I first left Wolf with my 3 kids and me. And it was just like a 2-bedroom, really tiny apartment. And the boys had the bedrooms, and I had a futon in the living room. And then there was like a kitchen. It was so tiny, you can't even imagine. But we lived there for a while. Anyway, across from me, it was 2 floors. We were on the bottom floor. And in between, you could like pull your car up and face, like you can pull in and the cars face each building that face each other. There's no real there's nothing but a parking lot in front of you, a sidewalk, and then your step to get in your apartment. And then, but it's 2 floors, and the second floor had a balcony, so you could walk out of your living room to the balcony and look down to the first floor and the cars in between the 2 buildings. Okay, got it? So, this one girl across the street, we're gonna have to call her Cheryl. So, Cheryl, across the street. she was on the second floor directly across from me. So when I would look out, I could see my car. Her car pulled into her way, like, and then the bottom floor, and then the balcony, and she lived in the balcony. One Saturday morning, she had 2 sons. She had just given birth, maybe 2 months before. Okay, this woman, Cheryl, across the street, 1 floor up, balcony, looked out to me. She had a son that was like, I don't know, 7, 8. My kids at that time were like 10, 11, and 14 or something like that. So, in those ranges. So, she also had just had a baby, maybe 2 months, 3 months before that. So anyway, her first son, we'll call him the Brat. Let's just call him the Brat. That's close to his name, so we'll call him the Brat. So, he had some issues. So, Saturday morning, I get up, I get my laundry. I'm like, okay, you had to drive down the hill to the laundry. You couldn't, like, walk there. It was just too far. I mean, I guess you could, but it would take a while, and you'd need to be carrying your clothes. So you have to drive there. So you drive down the hill to the laundromat and put your clothes in, and then you went home, because I couldn't leave the kids for that long, because I didn't have anybody to watch them back then. So I would put my clothes in, go back home, hope nobody stole them, go back, put them in the dryer, go back home, you know. So it was only like a minute drive, but it would have been like a 10-minute heavy walk. So I load my car up and I drive down and I put all the laundry in. And when I come back, well, you know, my kids are not allowed to let anybody in when I wasn't there. But when I drive in and I pull in front of my front door, because I'm bottom floor, my 3 kids are lined up against the wall of the apartment like this. So I get out of the car, I'm like, what's the matter? And they're like, Brad is in there, and he stole one of his mom's beers, a 40, and he poured it in his mouth and shook his mouth up to show us how it foamed up, and then he spit beer foam all over the living room. I said, well, what did you do? They said, we came out here so you knew it wasn't us. I had 3 boys, you know. Anyway, so I open my door and this kid's in the middle of my living room with beer foam everywhere, and I'm like, Brett, what are you doing? And he runs out, had a 40 of his mom's 40. So I go up to the apartment, I walk on up the steps to her apartment, and I knock on the door, and I say, Cheryl, Brad's got one of your 40s. This is 10 o'clock in the morning. She opens the door. She has her Marlboro cigarettes rolled up in her sleeve of her white t-shirt, and she's got a 40 in her hand. She's drinking. So I'm like, okay. Anyway, I don't care. I say that like shocking, but I really don't give a fuck. I just don't want him in my house. So I say, listen, Cheryl, your son's just blah, blah, blah in my house, and he's got one of your 40s. She's like, what? So I said, yeah. So she said, I'll take care of it. I'm sorry. I said, no biggie. You know, I walk downstairs, get my kids, round them up, throw them in the house, because I don't want any more shit, and clean up the phone. No biggie. I'm not upset. I'm not mad. But apparently she lit this kid up, you know? Like, he must have got his ass whooped, because he got really mad at me for telling. So, a little while later, I go back down to put the clothes from the washer into the dryer. And as I pull in, he's sitting on my step, 1 step into the apartment. So I'm like, what the fuck? So I said, Brett, what are you doing? I look down, and he's got a popsicle stick. And he's doing this on the ground, like shaving it down, or like, what would you call that? You know, he's like sandpapering it with the sidewalk being cement. So I said, and there's 2 frogs, and they're upside down going, but they're upside down, not moving. So I said, Brett, what are you doing? And he says, I'm shaving a popsicle stick. I said, why? He said, I'm going to make it sharp. I said, and then what? Because he's got 2 frogs. He's like, I'm going to put it up the frogs' butts. I said, Brett, you can't do that. He says, yes, I can. I broke their legs. Can I tell you that the kid right now is an adult and he is in jail in Florida for murder, or attempted murder. He had issues. The other son, beautiful kid. She was a lovely, like, even though she had her issues back then, she had a really hard life. And now she is great. I see her all the time. I like her. She's like not a monster or anything. That day was a monster day. And he was so hard on her. This kid was like a rough kid to raise, obviously. I felt bad for her a lot of times because things would happen, like he got stuck on the roof the day after this all happened, and the firemen came to get him, and he tried to jump into the pond next to, like, just scary, and she would cry, and sometimes, you know, she's not a bad mom. I don't want you to get, just because of what happened, because after that, well, I'll tell you. So anyway, so I said, listen, take those frogs right now and throw them back in the pond. And he's like, why? And I'm like, just throw them in the pond. And I'm sure the frogs drowned because their legs are broken. I didn't know what to do with them. They were just sitting there suffering. And I don't know how to kill a frog. And I wouldn't have killed a frog. It was just awful. So he walks over to the pond with the 2 little frogs. They were little frogs. He tosses them. They just splat in the water. I didn't even see where they went, like, or if they could. And then he, like, stomps away, pissed off. So then I guess he said something to Cheryl, and she walks out and says, what's going on? So I tell her what happened. I'm like, I don't know, your kid's like, I said, Brad is having a bad day today. And she's like, get in here! And she grabs him up by the arm and throws him in, and she's drunk. Enough. I go back home. I'm like, this is ridiculous. So, anyway, a little while later, this guy, we used to call him Visa John, because he had all these credit cards, and he, like, thought that made him, like, rich, and he acted like a rich boy. He was a chef, and my oldest son worked with him, but he was really funny and really nice, and we really liked Visa John. So, anyway, he had just bought an IROC, the car, IROC, and it was just the prettiest little white thing ever, and he pulled it into the parking lot to show us. So we came out, and we were like oohing and on, like you do for people who buy a new car. And then we go into my apartment, not even thinking about Brad anymore. So a few minutes we're in there, and this guy that lived like 2 doors down from me, he comes over and knocks on my door. So I open the door, I'm like, hey. And he's like, that little kid from across the street upstairs? I'm like, yeah. He's like, he's in the bushes throwing rocks at that whoever's new car that is. Holy shit. Like, it was right off of the showroom floor. So Visa John jumps up, flies outside, he's like, Jesus Christ, there's like chunks of paint missing from the side, like literally a quarter size. And he is out of his fucking mind. And the kids go on, because I guess he saw my neighbor come to tell. So at this point, I have to call the cops, because Visa John is like, I need a fucking cop quick to get this fixed. Like, fuck this kid, where is he? I'm gonna beat him up and all this. And of course, you can't beat him a kid, but this guy, Visa John, was only like maybe 25, 30 years old, and pissed off with all due right to be pissed off. He has every right. So, this time, the cops pull up. So he calls cops pull up. And they walk up to knock on her door, and no one answers. And I know she's in there, like I know. a report to him, and the cops leave. And everybody leaves, and my kids, go and play whatever they're doing. And all of a sudden, I'm in my apartment, and I hear, and I'm like, what is that? So I walk over to the living room and open the door and look across the street, and Cheryl is on her balcony, drunk, screaming at me, we're gonna go, blah, 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 blah. I'm gonna fuck you up, And I'm just standing there like, what the fuck did I do? I haven't done shit to you, lady. I should have gone up, but I didn't, So by now, everybody, like, this is almost like a friends complex, if you know what I mean. Like, everybody lived, everybody's young, everybody's single. So they all start coming out of the woodwork to see what the commotion is. And I'm standing on the bottom, she's on the top across from me, and she's just cussing me out left and right and this and that. And she's like, we're gonna go. And I'm like, go where? And she's like, we're gonna fight, or whatever she said. I don't even know what she said, but she did say, we're gonna go. And I did ask her where we're going. At which made everybody laugh, which in my mind is diffusing the situation. And she looks a mess. I gotta tell you, she looked a mess by then. She had really short hair, and the cigarettes, and the white t-shirt's kind of dirty now, and she's got the, she didn't. So I said, are you talking about, like, fighting me? Because I'm in shock. And she's like, yeah, we're gonna go. And I said, oh my God, Cheryl, I'm sorry. Fighting you would constitute me getting close enough to you to smell your sweat, and I just can't do things like that. She about wanted to jump off the balcony to get to me. So she was like, ah! And I was like, ah! I turned around and ran back in my apartment. I'm a pussy, man. I was like, no. Everybody fell apart laughing. She didn't find me. Anyway, I just went in my apartment like, yeah, right. Not happening. Not gonna get near you to touch you. Just not on that day. And so she, I guess, went in. I don't know what happened, like, to her. I just, like, was like, bye, bitch. See ya. And I went in my apartment, and everything quieted down. So the next day, I went, got my laundry and all that. I don't know where she went for the rest of the day. The next day, I saw her out in the parking lot. I wasn't afraid of her. I wasn't running away from her. I don't think, I just assumed she wasn't going to take it any further. And if she did, then I would have dealt with it then. But I'm not going to assume the worst in somebody when somebody was really having a bad day. Well, that was the first thing I said to her that really pissed her off when she was on the balcony. I said, come on, Cheryl, can't we just chalk it up to one of Brat's bad days? And that just made her worse. And I was like, great. But everything I said, everybody laughed at, which kind of fueled the fire for her, But I wasn't, at first, I really wasn't, laughing at her. But then I was like, yeah, I'm not touching that thing, so no. And so that's how it was. So I saw her in the parking lot. She didn't say anything to me. I didn't say anything to her. It's like, I'm not going to start something. I don't care. It's all over. It was your kid. I understand kids doing shit too. I know some people my son, my daughter, never. Yeah, right. You'll be in the same position in a year. So anyway, about maybe, we lived alongside each other, do you know what I mean? But there was no communication. And then she worked at a store down in town, and I went into the store one day and was buying stuff, and she was behind the counter. So I said, how you doing? Yeah, I'm not afraid. I just don't expect anything more, because really, she knew I didn't set out to hurt her or her kid. It just was one of those days. listen, I've also woken up and drank. So, again, you don't have to apologize to me. I'm a horrible drunk. I don't drink anymore because I'm a shit. Because what little filter I have goes away the minute you pour alcohol in here. And I just say horrible things. Still, never had a fist fight. So, that was it. And since then, I see her, in town. If I go shopping at the store, she works at still to this day. And I kept up on how her kids were, and unfortunately, Brad did not so far have, I hope he's changed his ways. He's in prison right now, but, God, I mean, that can happen to any of us, So, I certainly did. I think she's lovely and sweet every time I talk to her, and but that's kind of the way things always seem to happen with me. Like, I've pissed off plenty of people, people with the ability and have very much in their life, like, smack people around. It just hasn't happened to me. Whether I'm lucky or whether because I promote nonviolence. I also, so one of my main jobs at work is when people get really upset, I have the ability to drop down. Like, instead of going with the fight, I will drop it down, and 9 times out of 10, they come with me. And I don't know why that is. Like, if somebody's screaming, yelling, this, that, about a really important issue, it could be about something totally real, but that I think it's inappropriate that they're screaming and yelling. And I just, kind of take my energy and drop it. I guess the leader thing with Aries, they drop with me. And so I have been able to dissuade many really freaky, scary situations and not get my head taken off the process. I don't know. And now I'm so old, I don't know what I'd do if somebody went after me physically. I'd be like, whoa. But, even when I was young, I have had a horrible mouth. I don't tend to lie much. And, that can be, that's not always an asset. That, I've heard people many times when I was younger telling the truth, and feeling very, righteous that I told the truth, In the meantime, I hurt people. And I've learned over the course of time, sometimes the truth just isn't all it's cracked up to be. Sometimes you gotta put a little sugar on it. And, it's hard for me. That's not my nature. My nature is to be brutally honest, unfortunately. And so, I've learned, I've matured. But even with that, not once has anybody ever punched me, nothing. And I certainly feel like I deserved it at times, but I don't know why. And when I tell people, and then I've never had a physical fight, they're like, get the fuck out of here. Oh, come on. You're an idiot driver. They don't believe, they're like, what? Just because my nature is to be a force, But if you know me, once you get to know me, you understand that I don't believe in it. I don't think that's a way to resolve anything, I just don't. Now, you might say that doesn't coincide with the video I just made. But as I said, I think that there's a time for words. Sometimes you got to do something to make people listen. I mean, I'm not talking about individuals here. I'm talking about, it's time to be heard. And I get that. And I get that I'm nonviolent. But sometimes you got to shake things up. So all I'm saying is I understand it. I wouldn't do it myself. I would never... that wouldn't be I don't know, would I ever vandalize? I guess given the right circumstances, we all could do things we say we'd never do. Do you know what I mean? But I would hope that I wouldn't. But this is for, I think if I was put in a situation where they were threatening my children, It's a different story. Mama bears are dangerous, you know? And I think that's where this went. I think this is every mother's nightmare, that this man screamed out for his mama. Ugh. Man, I wish I was there. I think I would have had to have pushed him off. Pushed the cop off. I say that, but they might have been holding guns to him. I don't know. I'm just saying, like, I might have had to do something. I'm not black, so I have the luxury of being heard. Oh my God, how many times am I going to drive down this fucking closed road? How many times? I have video that I've done this like 50 fucking times. I am an idiot, a complete idiot. I can't remember, especially when my mind's on something else. So anyway, now back to 13. Yay! Yay, you dumb bitch! So that's a story. The one time in my life I was called out. I mean, other than a kid on a playground type thing. But the one time I was called out to, like, fight with these hands, the ones with the nails, no. Sorry, not gonna touch you. Ew. That's what I thought about. I was like, oh, I can't get near you.